Welcome to your Lunar Eclipse in Scorpio rising sign horoscopes. Yes, you want to watch this from your rising sign. I don't have the time to explain why you should watch it from your rising sign, but I do actually have a video about that called What You Don't Know About Your, or What You Don't Understand About Your Birth Chart. If you want to know why to watch this horoscope from your rising sign, make sure you check out that video. But these clips are from my monthly rising sign horoscopes that I post every single month over on my Patreon for the $10 tier. If you are interested in supporting this channel, getting monthly rising sign horoscopes, as well as Ask Me Anything live streams, I do monthly overviews, as well as there's a Discord, there's bonus content, as well as ad-free and early release. So if you're interested in any of that and helping me support the channel, please consider becoming a Patreon member. So with that being said, make sure you like this video, comment, let me know what your thoughts and opinions are about this lunar eclipse in Scorpio and what you've got going on in your own personal life, and enjoy the video. We're starting off with Aries rising. We get to the 5th. We've got two things going on. Number one, we have Venus squaring Neptune along with a sextile to Jupiter. So Venus being your second house ruler of money, of finances and resources, it's in Gemini in your third house. So short distance travel, siblings, neighbors, communication, how you're utilizing your time. And there might be this kind of general confusion, like Venus squaring Neptune is just like maybe overstimulation, not getting exactly what you want out of things, or feeling overwhelmed with all of the things that are going on. But Venus is sextiling Jupiter. So there is this kind of like, confidence that's coming up. You're having your fun, but you are a little bit overwhelmed and are a little bit overstimulated, especially when it comes to anything finance related or relationship related. Like there might just be some general confusion, feeling overwhelmed, but at the same time, feeling very confident about something new that might be beginning. So I do like that for you. But the next thing that we have is the total lunar eclipse happening in your 8th house. This is the last lunar eclipse in Scorpio. So this is one last drain of this one last expense when it comes to 8th house of other people's money, shared resources, debt, taxes, insurance, inheritance, secrets even. And so Mercury's been retrograding in your 2nd house. Jupiter's about to go in there. You're kind of getting ready for all of this money stuff that's about to happen. And this is just one last bill that you have to pay, or one last thing that you have to take care of. Or maybe you made more money and you didn't account for taxes and what that tax increase was going to look like. If you're in a relationship, this could also look like your partner being a little bit more expensive and having to have some expenses be put into your partner, into your relationship. So that's what that's looking like. It's a lunar eclipse in Scorpio. It's going to feel like, shit. It's going to feel like an emergency situation. So try to go about it in the most calm way possible. Like if shit hits the fan, just know it's just an eclipse moment. It might feel like an emergency, but you still have to act cool, calm, and collected. But this is just kind of one last paying off debts, handling other people's money, maybe taxes, maybe death, inheritance, anything like that. Just kind of wiping it, like pretty much wiping it out, being done with it. And then we're literally done with the eclipses in your 8th house after that. So that is a reason to celebrate. The other thing that we have is on the 7th is when we're going to be having Venus enter Cancer. And now all of the focus gets turned into your home, your living situation, your family. Mars has been there, so there's been maybe some problems, some fights, and some conflicts, feeling very moody or crabby. As Venus goes in there, I think it's just going to feel a lot better. Like maybe like it's kind of like you're hangry. Like Mars in Cancer is like hangry, and then Venus in Cancer is like after you're being fed and nourished and you like cuddle and it feels good. But it's your 2nd house ruler of money, and it's going into your 4th house of home and family. So maybe there's some more expenses going on with the living situation at this point. But I do like that. I think that is going to feel a lot better for you guys. Now for Taurus rising. We get to May 5th, and we have two things going on. The first thing is we're going to be having Venus make a square to Neptune while also sextiling Jupiter. Venus squaring Neptune, again, I think I talked about this in the monthly overview, but this seems like some sort of a miscommunication with friends around possibly money stuff or possession stuff. Like maybe you loan something out to a friend, or you're borrowing something from a friend. Same thing too. Maybe you're going out with friends. Like this is like a typical example of this is like a friend invites you to a bar. So you go and you guys buy drinks. And at the end of the drinks, you guys each get 3 drinks and your friend's like, oh, I don't have any money. Can you buy it for me? And you're like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't you just say that? I would have, why did you wait till the very end? That's like what this looks like to me. So there is some like spending money involved, but it's a little, confusing. It does sextile Jupiter though. Like realistically, your 11th house ruler of friends is in the 12th house of hidden enemies. This might be a little bit of that, like, what the fuck? And it's also your 8th house ruler too. So like other people's resources. In fact, I think that drinking example I use is a really good example of what this could look like. Of course, you want to put that into the context of your own life and situation. But also on the 5th, we get the total lunar eclipse in Scorpio. This is our last eclipse in Scorpio. This is our last dump. It's like the toilet's been clogged. You've been plunging and plunging and plunging, and it finally goes down the drain. 7th house of relationships, other people. So if you're in a significant relationship, maybe you've been going through some problems. This is one last problem you guys got to go through, one last fight. And I think at this point, it's just exhausting. Like Mars is in Cancer. Like you guys are just crabby. You're just hangry. It's just over petty bullshit. If you're not in a relationship, this could bring up like a very significant encounter with an individual. And if you're like a woman and you live in a very like treacherous area, I'd be a little bit careful about like going out at night, having situational awareness, because this can symbolize some sort of a problem with, your 7th rulers in the 3rd of like local places. Like if you're walking down the street, like pay attention to your surroundings. You don't want to involve like, you can avoid conflict. And that's what I would suggest with this is like avoiding conflict as much as possible. But there is some sort of like deep emotional like anger or resentment built up in a relationship, and it's just one last like having to get it all out of your system. So after that, we're done, and things get to really be a lot better after that. Now for Gemini rising, so that's how I would look at this. Then we get to the 5th, and the first thing we've got going on is Venus is going to make a square to Neptune and sextile Jupiter. I think this is another thing of like your 12th rulers and your 1st, where you're seeing kind of the worst in yourself, and it's squaring Neptune. So you're like, oh, I'm shitty, and that means I can't do this, and I can't do that, and what am I supposed to do? And this is like kind of a spiraling moment, so you kind of just have to like know that. Like you might kind of spiral, but have a safe space to spiral. You don't have to actually make any decisions today. You don't. I'm telling you. Venus will sextile Jupiter, though. So there is this kind of like, camaraderie with friends or, connecting with specific relationships that might kind of help you get out of that and see the best in it. But the other thing that we have going on in the 5th is this last lunar eclipse in your 6th house. So we're talking about health, specifically talking about ill health, work, coworkers, schedule, day-to-day routines, and pets. These have been going on since technically November of 2021, and then January of 2022, May of 2022, November of 2022. This is just the last purge. Like, again, maybe you've been trying to see, like, get more in shape, seeing your body and health problems maybe have been coming up. This is like a health issue could come up, like you could get sick, but this is just like the time to just like power, like, again, take the NyQuil, just drain out, like, don't worry about anything and just purge. Like, all this is purging. This could involve coworkers in your day job too. Like maybe being like, I don't want to work here. I don't feel comfortable here. And I would say that, like, I wouldn't recommend quitting on this day just because your ascendant ruler is retrograde, but this might be the day where you accept that as a reality. Now for Cancer rising, we get to the 5th. And on the 5th, first thing we've got going on is Venus making a square to Neptune, but sextiling Jupiter. This is a little weird. Venus does rule your 4th house of living situation. It's been in your 12th house. So there's been, maybe you've just been more alone, spending time at home. Your 11th house ruler is in the 12th. So there's this kind of, again, like spending more time alone. And Venus squares Neptune, where I just feel like maybe you're a little, like, kind of losing it a little bit, maybe being a little bit too isolated, maybe being like, too overwhelmed with nothing. Like Venus in Gemini in your 12th house is having a little bit too much fun. It's kind of like, reminds me of that Toy Story bit, like in the first Toy Story where Buzz, like after he loses his arm and Woody checks on him and he's like, oh, sit down for tea. And like, this is almost what this looks like to me. Venus is going to make a sextile to Jupiter though. So I like that for career stuff. Like, hey, maybe you're just going to spend some time alone and work on, content, work on just work on shit alone. I like that. Or maybe, again, you hang out with coworkers. That's probably fine. But then we also have our last total lunar eclipse in Scorpio in your 5th. What do you got to get rid of? Like, we've had these eclipses here for a while now, and this is the last one. So it's kind of the analogy I've been using has been, if the toilet's been clogged, you've been plunging and plunging and plunging, and now it's about to finally all go down the drain and that shit's out of here. but it's your fifth house: love, romance, sex, pleasure, recreation, children. What has there been this gunk around that you just need to purge and let go of? Like, what do you not desire anymore? What is not fun for you anymore? What have you been trying to hold on to that clearly is not working, being held on to? This is the time to purge it and get rid of it. And then right after that, on the 7th, is when Venus is going to enter Cancer, and I think you'll feel a lot better during that time. Like, Mars has been in your first house. You've been crabby after that very, very, very long Mars retrograde in your 12th. And then Mars in your first, feeling very crabby, feeling very, frustrated. I think Venus coming into your first house, I think you're going to start to warm up a lot more. You think you're going to feel like you're going to look good. You're going to feel good. And so I like all that. Leo rising. As we get to the 5th, we have a few things happening. One, we're going to have Venus square Neptune as well as sextile Jupiter. And I think as Venus sextiles, as Venus squares Neptune, Venus is in your 11th house of friends, community, networks. So maybe you're socializing more, having a lot more fun. But it's squaring Neptune, just overstimulated, feeling confused. There's too much going on, not enough answers. And Neptune's in your 8th of like shared resources. So again, maybe you're borrowing things from people, or you're hanging out with a specific person, and there's just kind of like this, like, not real sure where the boundaries are or where things are going. It is sextiling Jupiter though. So it's like, there is this opportunity here. Maybe that's to travel or to learn or some fun thing happening, but the overall like consensus of it or the feeling of it is still very confusing. Like, it's exciting. There's some cool opportunities, but there's some shadowy part of it that might feel very deceptive. So I'd watch out for that. But the other thing that we have going on is the last lunar eclipse in Scorpio in your 4th house. So we've had the eclipses here for quite some time now, where there's been just a lot of drain, exhaustion, problems with your home, your family, and your living situation. This is the last one. This is an emergency type event where there could be all of a sudden a crisis related to the home, the family, your living situation. And this is just one last purge, one last getting rid of things. Maybe you're moving. Maybe there's one problem there's going to be some problem at your living situation or with like a family member, like a parent. That would be from a parent, like a mother or a father. And it's just one last like drain, exhaustion, some type of problem here that is just going to feel gunky and sticky. And it's just time to purge that kind of stuff out. So like maybe you're ready to move. Maybe you've just got to deal with a family member, issue that you've got to deal with. But that's the last one. And then after that, you don't have to deal with it anymore. And the eclipses start to happen in much easier houses for you. Then after that, Venus enters Cancer, where this is where you're probably going to be doing a little bit more work within. Mars has been in your 12th house, where you've been a little bit more reclusive, but in a crabby way. I think as Venus goes into Cancer in your 12th, it's like enjoying the more reclusiveness, enjoying more of the relaxation, being more at peace with like being more alone or more isolated, and not being so like afraid of it. Virgo rising. So that looks all really exciting. And I've been telling everyone, this is a really exciting month. It's all kind of the same shit. Realistically, it's just all like things are starting to move, like work themselves out and move forward in a lot of ways. So we get to the 5th, and technically here on the 4th, Venus is going to make a square to Neptune and sextile Jupiter. So the big thing here is Venus is in your 10th house. It does rule your 9th house. So spirituality, publishing, broadcasting, social media. It's in your 10th house of career, reputation, legacy. Having a lot of fun there, but it's squaring Neptune, where there's this kind of confusion or maybe overstimulation or feeling overwhelmed with a specific individual, a specific relationship. Maybe it's someone even that you work with, that like the clarity isn't really there. Venus is sextiling Jupiter, where there's like cool, like your 7th ruler's in the 8th. There's this kind of access to shared resources that are creating opportunities for you, which is exciting. It's like someone might commission you for a big project and you're like, that's great, but they're not really clear on what they want. And so that might make it difficult for you to navigate. Okay. But the other thing is we have our last total lunar eclipse in Scorpio. The eclipses have been happening in your 3rd house for quite some time now. And this is just the last one. This is the 3rd house. So communication, siblings, neighbors, short distance traveling, utilization of your time. This is going to be one last problem here. Maybe even something with your car too. This could rule car stuff. Maybe one last problem, one last drain, one last, I need to get rid of this, one last purge. And like the 9th house is like what you learn, and the 3rd house is how you use it. So maybe as Mercury's been retrograding your 9th house, you've been relearning a lot of things. And so now it's time to look at your 3rd house and be like, shit, now that I've learned these new things, I have to redo the way that I've been doing things. And it's like old habits die hard. And so it's like, retraining yourself, getting rid of those old habits to implement something new. So again, what's exciting is this is just the last one. So it's not, yes, it's bad. Yes, it's an eclipse, but like I look at this as an opportunity to just like really clean sweep, just get everything out so you can move on. Libra rising. Then we get to the 5th here, and there's a few things going on. First is on the 4th, actually, technically, Venus is going to square Neptune and sextile Jupiter. No way. Did I fuck this up? Okay. This is Scorpio rising, clearly. Shit. Mercury retrograde. I was dealing with this problem earlier. So we'll just come back to here. Now we're talking about the 5th. And Venus is going to make a square to Neptune, and it's going to sextile Jupiter. So as Venus squares Neptune, Venus is in your 9th house of spirituality, broadcasting, publishing, far distance travel. There's a lot of fun and stimulation going on in this area, but as it squares Neptune in your 6th house of like work, routine, like for example, my sister, I've talked a little bit about her. She's starting her own photography and videography business. She's doing all this social media stuff, and I could see this being for her. It's like having all of these things to have to do, but feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated with the work aspect of it and having to prioritize. Like Venus square Neptune is just like overstimulation, too much loud noises, too much music, too bright of lights. But Venus is sextiling Jupiter, where Jupiter's in the 7th house. This is your 6th ruler of, again, pets, coworkers, employees, health. It's in your 7th house of relationships. So there's a significant individual related to this area that's very prominent in your life. And it's sextiling Jupiter. So there's this like some sort of cool thing happening with someone, like maybe that's a client or, anything work related pretty much. That's cool. But there's something about it that's confusing. There's not a lot of certainty there. There's a little confusion and maybe overstimulation. And then we're going to pretend that the moon is here in your 2nd house, and we have one last eclipse in your 2nd house of money. Expect a big expense coming up where you might have to drain a little bit of your finances. You might have to spend money you don't want to. And there's this like feeling of like, didn't want to buy that, didn't want to spend it, but it's like an eclipse. It's an emergency feeling. But this is the last one. After this, we're all done. So it's just, you had a big expense in May of 2022. You had a big expense in November of 2022. This is the last one, and you won't have to deal with it after that, okay? And then Venus enters Cancer, where now, Mars has been in your 10th house, where there's maybe been some like crabbiness or some frustration with like work and career stuff. As Venus comes into here, there's a lot more fun. There's a lot more value. There's a lot more safety and security related to work stuff. And again, this is all happening on the 4th through the 7th. Scorpio rising. We get to the 5th. Oh, and this is Libra rising. Okay, I had this problem. I mixed up Libra and Scorpio for some reason. So we're going to look at it through this perspective. On the 5th, so let's ignore this. On the 5th, we're going to have a few things. One, Venus is going to square Neptune and sextile Jupiter. Your 7th ruler is in the 8th house of other people's money, shared resources, your partner's money. So that maybe your partner's spending a lot more money right now. Maybe, they're buying this, they're buying that. It's going to square Neptune, where there's this kind of like overstimulation. Like that's the best way I'd look at it, is like there's this overstimulation and confusion that sets in the relationship. Venus will sextile Jupiter though. And so while Jupiter's in your 6th house, expanding work, expanding routines, expanding health, all of that good stuff, it's kind of like maybe you're doing something new and different that is fun and exciting, but there is a little bit of like overstimulation, especially really like drugs, alcohol, partying. That's the way I would look at this. It's in weird places for you guys. But then on the 5th, that actually happens on the 4th, this Venus stuff. On the 5th, this is the moon. We have our last lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Okay, this is our last eclipse in your 1st and your 7th house. You might lose it. you might pop off. But like, you're just going to feel shitty afterwards. Like, you're just going to be like, why did I do that? Like, you're just crabby. You're just emotional. Your ascendant ruler's fallen. But this is one last purge too, especially related to like the body. Like if you've been really tired, if you've been really low energy, like Change your diet, get rid of your clothes, get rid of stuff that you don't need anymore. Like that's like what the universe is trying to tell you here. But this is one last purge. After this, things get way, way easier related to the body and health. But this is, I think, a low point where you may even get sick. But this is one last low point, one last purge you kind of have to do. Okay. And then after that, Venus enters Cancer, which is nice because the ninth house, spirituality, religion, far distance travel, publishing, broadcasting. Venus in the night, like Venus in Cancer, like Mars in Cancer is feeling very crabby, very hangry. Venus in Cancer is like very nourished, feeling very good. And it's in your ninth house. So I think you're going to be enjoying traveling more, your spirituality, getting more into your Zen mode, I think is what's going to be happening here. So I really like that for you guys. And the relationship stuff will get better by that point. Sagittarius rising. But we get to the 5th, and the first thing is actually on the 4th. We're going to have Venus make a square to Neptune, but sextile Jupiter. So Venus is in your 7th house more. There's a lot more connection, stimulation related to relationships, other people. A lot more fun with relationships given the past 8 or 9 months with Mars there. But as it squares Neptune, there's some sort of confusion related to living situation, home and family, maybe overstimulation, like fun here, but it's causing stress here. But Venus is sextiling Jupiter. Like Jupiter's in your 5th, so love, romance, sex, pleasure, recreation, hobbies, music, art, children. So Jupiter's here. There's still a lot of opportunities. Venus is sextiling Jupiter, so there's opportunities to do that with an individual, but it becomes a little overwhelming and confusing related to the home and the family and the living situation part of it. Then we get to the actual 5th, and then we have our last lunar eclipse in Scorpio in your 12th. These have been brutal. I'm over them. I'm so over these eclipses in my 12th. I'm so ready for this to be done and over. But a lot of this is like the 12th house is fears, self-sabotage, isolation, alienation. And Scorpio is just that, like, just holding on to things. And this is the South Node. You got to release. You got to let go. So this is like one last purge. And a lot of this is related to health and activity stuff. Like, what do you need to let go of? What do you need to not regurgitate, but what do you need to like literally purge out of your system in order to access better health? Because like health and work are like a really big theme moving forward in May. And if I haven't said it already, May is a really awesome month. It's kind of the same shit, like all focused on one area, but as things kind of move forward, like everything will kind of start to move forward in a much more positive sense. So this is like one last purge, one last letting go. And then Venus enters Cancer, where Venus is about fun and connection and pleasure. And she's now in Cancer in your 8th house. You know, I talked a lot about like my tax situation. I'm taking care of it. Don't worry. 1 year at a time. But Mars in the 8th house has been like, problems or crabbiness related to other people's money, other people's finances, shared resources. So like if you're in a relationship, maybe there's been some problems with your partner's money, or, you know, there's been like a lack of, or you've been having to take care of stuff. Mars in Cancer is very crabby, like hangry, versus Venus in Cancer is like post-meal dopamine, like feeling full, feeling nourished, feeling protected and safe. And so I think as Venus enters your 8th house, there's a lot more like feeling like good about this area, like of other people's money, shared resources, debt, inheritance, taxes, feeling more secure, feeling more safe, feeling very nostalgic, but also feeling very emotional too. And we'll keep talking about that as we move forward. Capricorn rising. And I've been trying to say this, I keep forgetting to mention this for all the signs, but May is a really good month. It's the same shit, different day, essentially, but we go from like moving backwards to standing still to then moving forwards then to like really kicking up speed here. We get to May 6th. I know this should say May 5th, but we have two things going on. One is Venus will be making a square to Neptune, and it will be sextiling Jupiter. So Venus rules your 5th house, love, romance, sex, pleasure, kids, recreation, art. It's in your 6th house of work, day-to-day activities, habits. So maybe you've just been being more, recreational, having more fun, being more stimulated. But Venus is squaring Neptune, and like Neptune rules your 3rd, not Neptune rules your 3rd, but it's in your 3rd house of short distance travel, siblings, neighbors. How do you spend your time? So I feel like this might be like wanting to do a lot of different projects, or do have this hobby or do this trip and X, Y, and Z, but still having to balance work and just feeling very overwhelmed with like your schedule. But Venus is going to sextile Jupiter. So there's like, again, this increase in home, increase in family, increase in living situation stuff that might be allowing you to do more when it comes to your habits and your day-to-day activities. I just think you might be feeling very overwhelmed. So it wouldn't be all that bad to take a chill pill around this time. And then actually on the 5th is when we have our last lunar eclipse in Scorpio. The South Node has been in your 11th house of friends for a long time. You lost some friends. You got rid of some toxic people. Maybe you're midheavens here. Maybe you changed your job or you moved on to a different part of your career. This is that one last purge. This is that. And this, again, this is your 11th house of friends and your 7th house of relationships fallen. So I think this is going to be a fallout with a friendship, to be honest with you. Like, this isn't working anymore. I don't like this. This could just also bring up drama in your relationship if you are in a relationship. If you're not, this was probably going to be a more friendship related thing. But it's just one last purge, one last dump. Toilet's been clogged for a long time, but now it's finally like drained out. And now it's time to like clean the toilet. But after this, we move on. The South Node will go into your 10th, which isn't necessarily bad. I'd rather deal with the South Node in Libra than the South Node in Scorpio, to be honest with you guys. So this is just the last one, and then we're fucking done, okay? And then after that, Venus enters Cancer, which is nice because now, like, Mars in your 7th house has been very crabby with relationships, but Venus, like, the analogy I've been using is like Venus in Cancer is like post-meal dopamine hit, like feeling full, feeling nourished. And it's going into your 7th house of relationships. So enjoying your relationships more, enjoying the people around you, especially your partner. It's also your 10th house ruler being, angular in Cancer. So I think there's just a lot of nourishment going on here by this point. Aquarius rising. Then we get to the 5th, and by the 5th, we have a few things going on. The first is Venus is going to square Neptune and sextile Jupiter. So this is kind of interesting, in my opinion, because your 4th ruler of home and family and living situation has been in your 5th house of love, romance, sex, pleasure, recreation, arts, music, creativity. So again, maybe you've been, trying to find a more creative space, a more recreational space from your home or from your living situation. And it's Venus and Gemini, being stimulated, having fun. But it's squaring Neptune in your 2nd house of money, where maybe there's this I've been looking at Venus and Gemini squaring Neptune as like overstimulation. And again, maybe there's just been like you're spending money on stuff and you just don't know how much money you have. And it's kind of here, it's kind of there. Again, related to like recreation and fun, even partying, like drugs and alcohol. So while Venus has been fun, squaring Neptune, it's kind of like, what do I want? Why am I spending this money? Are you buying the right things? But it is sextiling Jupiter, which is your 2nd ruler in the 3rd. So it's like you have the opportunity and the funds to buy things or to go and recreate, or you have the schedule and the time to. It's just that maybe feeling overwhelmed with all of like the money stuff about it is what's getting a little interesting. But also on the 5th is when we have the last lunar eclipse in Scorpio in your 10th house. So South Node has been going through your 10th house for quite some time now. Things related to work, career, legacy, been very draining, a lot of really exhausting, having to let go of a lot of stuff. And this is the last one. So think of May of 2022, think of November of 2022, whatever was going on around that time, you're going to kind of come back to. And this is just one last dump. There's a lot of focus on the living situation. And it's like the 10th and the 4th house axis is like, okay, once your living situation is stable, work becomes better. And your work is going to be shit if your living situation is shit. Vice versa, right? If your living situation is shit, your work is shit. And so this is how I look at it with this is while you're negotiating and doing all of this changes with your living situation, there's one more problem, one more emergency type event going on with the career, with your work stuff. And your 10th ruler is fallen in the 6th. So it's just like maybe not having the energy, maybe not having the time to do the things that you need to do because of all the living situation stuff. And it's just one last emergency event, one last dump, one last exhaustion. And then we're done with it. And the nodes move into, in my opinion, better places for you. But this doesn't look that fun. But May is a good month. Like I've been trying to tell all the signs that like May is a really good month. We move to the 7th. Oh, and then after that too is when Venus actually enters Cancer. So after this eclipse, I think just work, health, schedule becomes a lot more fun and enjoyable, especially related to the 9th house, spirituality, learning, higher education, far distance traveling. Oh gosh, excuse me. Venus is entering your 6th house. Mars in Cancer has been very like crabby and hangry, versus Venus in Cancer is feeling very nourished, feeling very safe, feeling very secure. So as Venus goes into your 6th house, that safety, security, that nostalgia, that feeling good goes into work, health, routine, employees, coworkers, day-to-day activities, even pets, and Pisces rising. We get to the 5th, and actually on the 4th is when we're going to be having Venus make a square to Neptune and sextile Jupiter. So Venus is in your 4th house, home, family, living situation. There's a lot of fun and connection here, way better than what it's been for the past 8 months with Mars and Gemini in your 4th house. But it's trying to enjoy things, especially related to other people's resources, shared resources, and the 3rd house of just like organizing, routines, schedules, communication. But Venus is going to make a square to Neptune, where this is like an overstimulation or feeling very overwhelmed. Like it's too many noises, too many lights, all of this and this and that. What's nice is that Venus will sextile Jupiter. And so Jupiter's in your 2nd house. There's a big look at your beliefs around money, finances, resources. There's an expansion of finances and resources. And I look at Venus sextiling Jupiter as like, okay, there's some sort of opportunity here related to living situation stuff to expand stuff, like related to money. Maybe it costs more money, but it just feels overwhelming to make a decision about it. So this would be like just keeping things in mind about it. But the other thing is on the actual 5th is when we have our last eclipse in Scorpio. So this eclipses have been happening in your 9th house since really November of 2021. And 9th house, spirituality, religion, far distance traveling, publishing, broadcasting, social media. The South Node's been here where there's just been this dump, this like, getting rid of things, this purging and this like drain and having to let go of stuff. And this is the last one. And what's interesting is the 3rd house has everything to do with like, how do you use your knowledge that you have? And the 9th house is like the knowledge that you have. Like, all right, you went to college. The 3rd house is like, how do you use that education? As Mercury's retrograde in your 3rd house of like utilizing knowledge, you're rethinking that area. And this 9th house is like letting go of beliefs, like letting go of like, hey, you might have picked up a bad habit or you might have picked up a bad like way of doing things. Like if you ever worked in a restaurant, like one restaurant might be super cool about you. Like if you're a bartender, like they just do open pours, like they don't really care, versus you go to a new restaurant and they only let you use jiggers. And it's just, you have to break a really bad habit and you have to rethink how you utilize the knowledge that you have. And in order to rethink the knowledge that you have to get rid of the old knowledge that doesn't work anymore. And so this is just the one last eclipse. After this, we're pretty much done. But it's just kind of like one last, flush of the toilet is what I've been saying. It's like if the toilet's been clogged, been hitting the plunger with it, now it's time to drain it all out. And then after that, Venus enters Cancer, where this is going to your 5th house, love, romance, sex, pleasure, recreation, arts, music, hobbies. And Mars in Cancer is so like crabby and hangry, like not having fun, not enjoying yourself. And if Mars is being hangry, if Mars in Cancer is hangry, Venus in Cancer is like post-meal, like dopamine, like loosening of the belt, relaxing a little bit. And I think it'll be a lot easier for you to have a little bit more fun, be more recreational, enjoy yourself more, especially like making more time to be more creative. I think would be one thing. Maybe having the resources or having other people's resources for that.